Don't wanna forget what you feel like. Don't wanna forget what you feel like on my body. Don't wanna forget what you feel like. Don't wanna forget what you feel like on my body.
Hi, this is John Cullen. Welcome to another episode of Bedtime Stories. In this episode, I'm going to be reading a Substack post by Andy Loue. And this was brought to my attention by one of my patrons who said you should probably check this out. And I did, and it's something that I'd like to read to you for Bedtime Stories. The solution to the Charlie Kirk assassination, and why Candace Owens can't or won't tell you, by Andy Loue. Published April 7th, 2026. Editor's note. This article presents both factual observations, flight data, public records, timestamps, and inferences drawn from them. For an explicit note on how to read statements about intent or responsibility, see the On the Epistemic Status of the Claims section at the end. On September 10th, 2025, at 12:23 p.m. Mountain Time, Charlie Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Within hours, a lone gunman narrative took hold. Tyler Robinson, 22, had fired a single shot from the rooftop of the Losi Center with a bolt-action Mauser rifle from 430 feet away. That narrative is now in serious trouble. In March 2026, the ATF reported it was unable to match the bullet recovered at autopsy to Robinson's rifle. The investigation has stalled. Podcasters and commentators have spent months circling the periphery, Egyptian planes, security failures, Colvit's flight movements, Fort Huachuca witnesses, but no one has talked about what was directly overhead. This article presents publicly verifiable flight data available to anyone with a Flight Radar 24 or ADS-B Exchange account that places a U.S. military intelligence aircraft at 200 feet above ground level next to UVU just before and just after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The data shows this was not an accident, not a coincidence, and not routine. It was the culmination of a multi-day rehearsal pattern that anyone can verify. Everything in this article is based on publicly available flight tracking data, FAA registration records, and open source corporate filings. No classified information was used. Verify it yourself. The aircraft, registration N1098L, Bombardier Global 6500, serial number 60098, call sign Axel 10. This aircraft is part of the Ares program, the Airborne Reconnaissance and Electronic Warfare System operated by Leidos under contract to the U.S. Army. It is one of at least 3 aircraft in the Hades High Accuracy Detection and Exploitation System training fleet based at Biggs Army Airfield, Fort Bliss, El Paso, Texas. These are not ordinary surveillance planes. Hades aircraft carry signals, intelligence, electronic warfare, and full-motion video sensors capable of intercepting communications, disrupting electronics, and conducting precision surveillance at street level. They are among the most capable ISR platforms in the U.S. military inventory. N1098L flies near daily training missions across the western United States under Axle Series call signs. Its flight history is publicly trackable on Flight Radar 24 and ADS-B Exchange. What it did on September 10th, 2025 is unlike any training mission in its recorded history. The rehearsals, September 8th and 9th. In the 3 days before the assassination, N1098L conducted a series of low-altitude passes at airports across the western United States. Each pass followed the same profile, a steep descent to extremely low altitude, simulating an aborted landing, before climbing away. The technique provides a fully deniable reason for an ISR platform to descend to sensor altitude over a target area. September 8th, Lubbock and Amarillo, Texas. N1098L departed Fort Bliss and conducted low approaches at Lubbock, 143 feet above ground level, and Amarillo, 268 feet above ground level. At Amarillo, the aircraft entered a holding pattern at 13,875 feet, circling and waiting. Then at 10 a.m. local time, it descended sharply to 1,170 feet above ground level for what appears to have been a live demonstration of its low-altitude capability. A VIP aircraft, SAM 702, a C-37A military transport carrying a senior government official, was on the ground at Fort Carson, Colorado at the time. The holding pattern is consistent with the aircraft waiting for the VIP to be in position to observe the demonstration, whether live, via live data feed or relay. September 9th, morning, Laughlin, Nevada. N1098L flew from Fort Bliss to Boise Airport via Laughlin, Nevada, initiating a low pass towards 430 feet above ground level at approximately 8:30 a.m. Arizona time. At that same hour, a meeting was reportedly taking place at Fort Huachuca, the Army's Intelligence Command Headquarters, INSCOM, 270 miles to the southeast. The SAM VIP aircraft had been on the ground at Fort Huachuca since the previous evening. A whistleblower, a former Special Forces soldier named Mitch Snow, who was at Fort Huachuca that morning to retrieve personal records, later described seeing a group exit a meeting room at the JTF headquarters building at approximately 8 to 9 a.m. Kirk's head of security, Brian Harpole, a congressman with a flag pin identified at 95% confidence as Rep. Mark Amade of Nevada, escorted by lieutenant colonels and a unit sergeant major. The timing is precise. N1098L was conducting what looks like a live demonstration of its low-altitude capability at the exact hour that a VIP group, including allegedly Kirk's own head of security and a sitting congressman, was meeting at the military's intelligence command. Whether they were observing the demonstration via data feed or simply being briefed on the capability that was being demonstrated 270 miles away in real time, The simultaneity seems beyond coincidental. And here we see Axle 10, which is in 1098L, and Laughlin, Nevada, Bullhead City. I guess that's right on the border. That's the Colorado River. I remember when Trump spoke at Bullhead City. So, Bombardier Global 6500, 129 knots at 1,125 feet above sea level. September 9th afternoon, Casper, Wyoming. On the return leg from Kalispell to Fort Bliss, N1098L descended to approximately 226 feet above ground level over Casper, Wyoming. This presents itself as a dress rehearsal at mission altitude, the same altitude it would later fly over Provo. The SAM VIP was airborne from Fort Huachuca to Fort Bliss at this time, not watching. This was likely a crew stress test, not a demonstration. Every rehearsal airport, Lubbock, Amarillo, Laughlin, Casper, was chosen where live ATC recordings, radio communications between air traffic control and aircraft, are unlikely to exist. Provo, which has an active live ATC feed, was used only on the operational day. The Convergence, Fort Bliss, September 9th. Later on the afternoon of September 9th, 3 aircraft converged on Biggs Army Airfield at Fort Bliss. SAM 702, a C-37A, call sign indicating a senior government VIP, arrived from Fort Huachuca at approximately 12:25 p.m. A second Ares aircraft, N9PS, call sign Axle 90, a Global 6000 registered to Asai Aviation for the U.S. Army, arrived from Midland, Texas, after conducting low-altitude maneuvers across West Texas and southern New Mexico. N1098L Axle 10 arrived at 2:34 p.m. from its Casper dress rehearsal. A third Ares aircraft, N2100L Axle 21, was already on the ground at Fort Bliss, having been there since September 4th. 3 Hades aircraft and a VIP transport on the same military tarmac. The SAM VIP departed for Washington, D.C. at 5:13 p.m. This looks to be a final inspection and approval. At the very least, it's a huge coincidence. The last stop on a tour that had visited Fort Carson, Special Forces, Davis-Monthan, Electronic Combat, Fort Huachuca, Intelligence Command, and now Fort Bliss, the Hades Fleet. The visited bases tell a story by themselves. Each represents a component of a complete operation. Fort Carson, the 10th Special Forces Group, the operators, unconventional warfare, demolitions, direct action, the people who execute. Davis-Monthan, the 55th Electronic Combat Group, the electronic warfare planners, communications suppression, narrative control, spectrum dominance. Fort Huachuca INSCOM, the intelligence brain, mission planning, command and control, target development where the plan could be approved. Fort Bliss, Biggs Air Force, airfield, the platform, the Hades aircraft that would provide the ISR umbrella and electronic warfare support for the operation itself. Operators, Electronic Warfare Intelligence Command, and the aircraft visited in sequence in 48 hours by a VIP senior enough to require a SAM-designated military transport. This is not a familiarization tour. It's an approval chain. All of this is visible on Flight Radar 24. The SAM call sign, the Axle call signs, the times, the airports. Anyone can look it up. September 10th, the operational day. The morning pass, 1510 to 1518 UTC, 9:10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. N1098L departed Fort Bliss for Kalispell, Montana. En route, it descended to approximately 4,700 feet barometric over Utah Lake and the Provo-Orem area, just 200 feet above ground level, given Provo's airport elevation of 4,497 feet. It flew a looping pattern at just 129 knots, unusually slow for a Global 6500. It had its lowest point at 9:16 local time, AM. This altitude and speed are consistent with both a complete electronic survey of the UVU venue area and with the safe deployment of small aerial systems. The Ares program has a documented launched effects capability for drones under 100 pounds. And here we see N1098L adjacent to Utah Valley University, 129 knots. It actually slows down to 113, I believe, is the slowest. And there you see the altitude and then dipping down, doing what it does, and then going all the way back up. N1098L then continued to Kalispell, arriving at 1644 UTC and coming to a stop. The afternoon pass, the hit window. N1098L departed Kalispell at 1728 UTC or 11:28 a.m. Mountain Time, heading south towards Provo. At 12:13 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, the exact moment Charlie Kirk took the microphone on stage, N1098L began its step-down descent from FL 370, 37,000 feet, to FL 300, 30,000 feet, where it held altitude until the shot rang out at UVU, at which point it continued its descent toward the target area. At 12:23 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, Kirk was assassinated. At 12:48 p.m. local time, N1098L was at its lowest recorded point, 224 feet above ground level, directly adjacent to UVU. At that altitude, the aircraft sensors provide near street-level surveillance capability, every face, every phone screen, every conversation within range. This altitude and speed are also consistent with the recovery of previously deployed small aerial systems, the same type of system the Ares program is documented to support. And here we see Axel 10 returning to the scene of the crime for the second time. The sudden descent from 30,000 feet to 224 feet does not look like a standard approach to any airport, even less so being initiated at the exact time of the assassination. Provo Airport is nearby, and the maneuver was conducted as an aborted landing, the same technique rehearsed at Lubbock, Amarillo, Laughlin, and Casper in the preceding days. What witnesses reported UVU? If N1098L was merely conducting surveillance, certain ground-level observations at UVU would make no sense, but if the aircraft was doing more than watching, they make perfect sense. Very few clear videos of the actual moment exist, despite 3,000 people with smartphones in attendance. Small objects, consistent with micro-drones, are visible in available footage hovering near Kirk on stage in the seconds before the event. A targeting type spot is visible on video moving across Kirk's body in the moments before the shot. Kirk's body reacted violently before any wound was visible. His t-shirt appeared to inflate as if from a blast. His necklace broke, despite being nowhere near the reported wound location. Members of Kirk's security team were filmed searching the grass 10 to 15 meters in front of his position approximately 9 minutes after the event, as if looking for small physical evidence. A member of the AV team removed an SD card from the 8K camera positioned behind Kirk within 3 minutes of the event. That footage has never surfaced except for a selected portion displayed over a FaceTime call, as reported by Candace Owens. I'll leave it to the reader to consider what aircraft deployed capability might explain all of these observations simultaneously. Why, no one will say it. In the months since the assassination, major podcasters and investigators have produced hundreds of hours of content about the Kirk case, Egyptian military planes, Fort Huachuca witnesses, security team failures, Andrew Colvit's flight movements, the bullet rifle mismatch, Erica Kirk's timeline, all important, all safe. What none of them have discussed is N1098L. Not the altitude data, not the rehearsal pattern, not the Fort Bliss convergence, not the electronic warfare effects at the venue. This is not because the data is hidden. Flight Radar 24 is a consumer app. ADS-B Exchange is a free website. The FAA aircraft registry is searchable by anyone. The Ares program is publicly documented. The Hades aircraft are photographed and discussed in aviation media. The flight data from September 8th, 9th, 10th is sitting there, waiting for anyone to look. So why hasn't anyone looked and reported on it? There's a meaningful difference between discussing security failures and discussing an active military ISR platform operating at 200 feet over a domestic assassination target. The first is embarrassing. The second implicates a classified U.S. military program in the killing of an American citizen on American soil. At least one person did look. On October 13th, 2025, independent researcher John Cullen published a detailed video titled Charlie Kirk Killing, Taboo Evidence Why, presenting some initial findings of the N1098L flight data and asking why no one was talking about it. The post received 149,000 views on X and over 100,000 views on the video. 902 people bookmarked it. John Cullen has not posted on X since and has been searched for by many. Meanwhile, Candace Owens, who has produced the most extensive public investigation into the Kirk case, has focused on Egyptian aircraft, rental cars in Provo, Fort Huachuca witnesses, and the security team. All legitimate leads, but she's never presented the N1098L altitude data, despite it being the most damning publicly available evidence in the case. The timing of certain events is worth noting. Days after Owens aired the Fort Huachuca whistleblower episode, in which a former Special Forces soldier placed Kirk's head of security and a U.S. congressman at the Army's Intelligence Command headquarters the day before the assassination, Erica Kirk contacted Owens and requested a private meeting. They met at a hotel in Nashville. What was discussed has not been disclosed, at least not in its entirety. Owens' investigation continued, but has not approached the military aircraft data. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm noting a pattern. The one piece of evidence that directly implicates a U.S. military program in the assassination, evidence that is publicly available and independently verifiable, remains untouched by every major voice in the investigation. The person who did touch it disappeared from public view. In the United States, the government has legal tools to prevent the discussion of classified military operations. National security letters can compel silence under penalty of federal prosecution, and the recipient is legally prohibited from disclosing that they received one. Individuals can be given classified briefings that bind them to secrecy. Access to guests, sources, and platforms can be withdrawn. I do not know whether any specific person has been told not to discuss N10980. I only know that the data is public, the pattern is clear, and no one has presented it. What this means for justice. Tyler Robinson sits in a Utah jail cell awaiting trial for a murder that the ATF cannot forensically link to his rifle. Meanwhile, the flight data presented in this article, public, verifiable, undeniable, points to something far larger than a lone gunman on a rooftop. If a U.S. military intelligence aircraft conducted rehearsed low-altitude passes over the site of a political assassination, while electronic warfare effects were reported at the venue, that's not a security failure. That's an operation. And that raises a question that goes far beyond Charlie Kirk. Can the United States military participate in the domestic assassination of an American citizen and claim immunity behind classification? The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 prohibits the use of federal military forces for domestic law enforcement. Executive Order 12333 bans assassination by any agency of the United States government. The Fifth Amendment guarantees that no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. No security classification, no national security letter, no secret authorization overrides the constitutional prohibition on the government killing its own citizens on its own soil. Yet, the practical reality is this. If the evidence of military involvement is classified, and anyone who discusses it can be silenced under penalty of law, and the investigation is controlled by the same federal agencies implicated by the evidence, then there's no mechanism for accountability. The classification itself becomes the immunity. The secrecy is not protecting national security. It's protecting the perpetrators. Joe Kent, the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, attempted to investigate a potential foreign nexus to the Kirk assassination. The FBI shut him down. He resigned in March 2026, stating his opposition to an Iran war that Kirk had spent the last months of his life trying to prevent. The investigation was closed before it was completed. Motives existed to have Charlie Kirk killed because he was effective. He had a platform, an audience, and direct access to the President of the United States. He used all three to oppose a war. That opposition was heard, and then it was silenced. The question is not whether the flight data proves military involvement. Anyone can review it and decide for themselves. The question is whether a democratic society can tolerate a situation in which the evidence of state involvement in a political killing is openly available, and no one in a position of authority is willing or allowed to act on it. If classification can be used to shield the killing of American citizens by their own military, then classification is no longer a tool of national security. It's a tool of tyranny. Charlie Kirk deserves justice. The public deserves the truth. And the flight data is waiting for anyone brave enough to look. Verify it yourself. Every claim in this article can be verified using publicly available tools. Flight Radar 24, search in 1098L, playback September 8th through 10th, 2025. Watch the rehearsals, watch the descent over Provo. ADSBexchange.com, same thing. Axle call signs, FAA aircraft registry, registry.faa.gov. You can search for N1098L right there. It's not a theory, it's data. Look at it, draw your own conclusions. The solution to the Charlie Kirk assassination is not on a rooftop in Orem. It's at 37,000 feet descending. The author is an independent, open source intelligence researcher based in Europe. This article is based entirely on publicly available data. The author has no affiliation with any government, military intelligence agency, media organization, or political party. Update, April 22nd, 2026, on the epistemic status of the claims in this article. The ADSB data placing N1098L near Utah Valley University at the time of the shooting is factual, sourced from public flight tracking records. What the aircraft was doing there, and whether its presence was connected to the event, is an inference, a hypothesis the accumulated evidence supports strongly enough to warrant public scrutiny, but which I do not claim as established fact. Benign operational explanations cannot be ruled out, either for the UVU flight pattern or for the flights that overlapped in time with the alleged Fort Huachuca meeting. But absent engagement from any of the relevant parties, including relevant investigative reporters, such clarification and explanation remains unavailable. I present these findings as a hypothesis grounded in open source evidence, inviting rather than preempting any reasonable rebuttal. Statements in this article about intent or responsibility on the part of named entities or individuals should be read as inferences, not verdicts. Andy Loue. This was published about 4 months ago, and you can find it at substack.com. This has been Bedtime Stories, the solution to the Charlie Kirk assassination, and why Candace Owens can't or won't tell you. I'm John Cullen. Thanks for joining.
The world was on fire, no one could save me but you. Strange what desire will make foolish people do. I never dreamed that I was somebody like you. I never dreamed that I was somebody like you. No, I don't wanna fall in love. No, I don't wanna fall in love with you. What a wicked game to play. You never felt this way. What a wicked thing to do.